It's not because they stop loving, but when a woman chooses silence, the broken men don't realize that's the moment they start losing the one thing they should have never let go. You think silence is a pause. You think silence is a test. You think silence is a game you still know how to play. On the first day, you smile. You tell yourself, she will text soon. You tell yourself, this is just space. You tell yourself, you still control the story. But day by day, the silence grows. Day by day, the waiting tightens. Day by day, the thing you call patience begins to suffocate you. You sit with your phone, not because you miss her, but because you still believe. You control the story. You believe. You understand what she's thinking. You believe she's pulling away to test you. You believe she will be afraid to lose you. You believe she will come back. But what if you've been wrong? What if she's not afraid of losing you? What if she's not waiting for your move? What if she already chose to leave, and you are the only one still playing the game? You think replaying her words gives you clues, but maybe replaying her words only delays the truth. You think she's wondering about you, but maybe she stopped wondering long before you started waiting. This is what relationship advice often misses. It tells you to understand her feelings. It tells you to predict her silence. It tells you to manage the distance. But this is not distance. You can manage. This is not silence. You can solve. This is not a game. You can win. Maybe the only thing you've been managing is your own denial. This is not a video to tell you to be stronger. This is not a video to tell you to be smarter. This is a video to remind you the smallest feelings, day by day, are where men like you start to break. Quietly, slowly, without knowing. This is what he thinks, day by day when a woman goes silent, especially for those over 40, for the men who've been through enough, but still feel something missing. If any part of this touches your silence, like the video, subscribe to Deep Modern Man. Turn on notifications so you won't miss the next quiet thing you might need to hear. And then there's a day, a moment, when a woman goes silent and you don't even notice what's really starting. You think it's nothing. You think silence is just a pause, a waiting room, a game you still know how to play. On the first day, you feel in control. You tell yourself she's just busy. You believe she'll reach out soon. You laugh it off. You think you know her rhythm. You think this is temporary. Your mind whispers, she'll be back. But what you don't know is that the first day of her silence is the first day you start to lose yourself. The first day is dangerous, not because she's gone, but because you still believe you are in control. You go about your day. You work. You meet friends. You pretend everything is fine. But somewhere, quietly, a small pulse of uncertainty begins. You check your phone, but not too often. You tell yourself, I'm not desperate. I'm not chasing. But that's the first illusion. The illusion that silence is still something you can solve. What you don't realize is this. Silence is not a door, waiting to be knocked on. Sometimes, silence is a door that's already closed, and yet, you hold on to the belief that you still matter. You think she's watching. You think she's waiting for you to do something right, to fix it. That belief feels safe. It gives you comfort. It helps you escape the weight of what's really happening, because the truth is too heavy. The truth is, sometimes, silence isn't a strategy. It's a goodbye that didn't need words. But on that first day, you can't see it. You're standing in the ruins, but still think you're inside the house. You don't realize you're holding on to air, and that's the quiet tragedy of the first day. Not that she stopped talking, but that you started lying to yourself. You call it space. You call it patience. You call it strength. But deep down, you're just afraid to admit you no longer know what she's thinking. This is the part many men miss when it comes to relationship advice. No one tells you silence can end relationships faster than words. No one tells you silence is sometimes the final answer. It's the beginning of a silent collapse. And by the time you notice the walls are missing, you're already sitting in the cold. When a woman goes silent, many broken men believe it's a game. But this is what he thinks day by day. When a woman goes silent, this is what happens. When the silence outgrows the dating advice you've been told, it's not a game. It's a decision she already made. And that's what you miss. On the second day, you still tell yourself, this is nothing. You check your phone, but you tell yourself, it's just habit. You believe she will text soon. You believe this is just a moment. You think silence is temporary. But silence has its own weight. It's quiet, but it's heavy. It doesn't scream, but it presses down. By the third day, you've checked your phone more than you admit. You've scrolled through old conversations. You've waited for the screen to light up, as if your attention could summon her. You tell yourself, I'm not desperate. I'm just curious. But curiosity doesn't come with that kind of ache. Curiosity doesn't come with that kind of panic. You replay old messages. You look for clues. You try to remember where the rhythm changed, but you can't find the moment. And maybe that's the worst part. There's no explosion. There's no final fight. Just distance. That grows quietly. You begin to write messages, then delete them. You think about what to say, but everything feels wrong. You wonder, should I text first? Should I wait? Should I ask? But what if asking makes me look weak? What if waiting makes me look cold? This is the mind of a broken man, trapped in his own silence, waiting for a reply that may never come. You tell yourself, this is just part of relationships. You tell yourself, this is something all men go through. But relationship advice often skips this part, the part where silence rewrites everything, the part where the wait itself becomes your prison. By the fourth day, you're checking her social media. You search for signs. You want to know if she's online. You want to see if she's happy without you. You watch her stories, but you leave no trace. You pretend you're not watching, but you're always watching. You don't talk about it, but it shows in the way you check your phone in the middle of the night, in the way you hope the next notification is hers. You still tell yourself, this is temporary. But day by day, you're not waiting for her anymore. You're waiting to feel important again. Carl Jung once said, "Every form of addiction is bad, no matter whether the narcotic be alcohol, morphine, or idealism. What you're addicted to is not her. It's the feeling of being needed, the feeling of being missed, the feeling of still holding a place in someone's life, and that's the trap. You think you're waiting for her, but you're waiting for a version of yourself that only existed when you felt chosen. You think you're patient, but you're afraid to let go. You think you're calm, but you're terrified of being forgotten. You think you're in control, but you're already chasing. You're not addicted to her. You're addicted to who you were when she still cared. You replay. You refresh. You remain. Not because you're strong, but because you're afraid to stop. This is what no one tells you in dating advice. Silence doesn't always bring people back. Sometimes, silence is where people disappear for good, and you're still sitting in it. By the second week, you begin to write messages, but you delete them. You type, you erase, you hesitate. You stare at the screen. You wonder, should you reach out? Should you stay silent? Should you wait longer? You ask yourself, do you even have the right to text her now? Do you still belong in her world? Or are you already standing outside, knocking on a door that no longer opens? You wait. You tell yourself, this is patience. But patience without clarity is just slow desperation. And slow desperation is still desperation. You sit in front of your phone longer than you admit. You check her online status. You check her story updates. You pretend you're not watching, but you are. You pretend you're fine, but you're not. You repeat the same small actions. You check. You wait. You scroll. Again. And again. And again. You don't call. But your attention never leaves her. This is where the walls start to crack. This is where you realize the silence is not shrinking. It's growing. The space between you is not a pause. It's a distance that keeps expanding. You thought the silence was her way of testing you. But what if the silence is her way of letting go? This is where most relationship advice falls apart. It tells you to stay calm, to stay still, to stay strong. But no one tells you what to do when stillness starts to suffocate you. No one tells you what to do when silence stops being a strategy and starts being a goodbye. You think you're waiting for her, but what you're really waiting for is proof. Proof that you still matter. Proof that you still hold space in her mind. Proof that you still exist in her story. But day by day, she gives you no proof, no sign, no signal. And what's worse, you start realizing she's not waiting for you to respond. She's not checking on you. She's not wondering if you still remember. She's not leaving breadcrumbs. She's not looking back. The silence that once felt like a puzzle now feels like a verdict. You write, you delete, you sit longer, you repeat more, you wonder, does she miss you? You ask, does she remember you? You hope, does she still feel you? But what you don't dare to ask is this: Do you remember who you were before this waiting began? Carl Jung once said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." The emptiness you feel, it's not just because she stopped texting, it's because you stopped speaking the truth to yourself. You are not weak because she stopped responding. You are not invisible because she walked away. You are not broken because she stayed silent. But you feel weak because you refused to admit you needed more than silence. You feel invisible because you kept pretending. The waiting was strength. You feel broken because you've been chasing yourself through her. You don't miss the old conversations. You miss who you were when you thought you still mattered to her. This is the moment when one part of you breaks. The part that believed you still had a place. The part that thought you still had her attention. The part that thought you still had time. You don't miss her presence. You miss your own. And maybe that's the most painful part of all. There comes a moment when you finally understand. The silence is not a test. The silence is not a punishment. The silence is not an invitation to chase. The silence is a decision. It's not waiting for your reaction. It's not waiting for your apology. It's not waiting for your attention. You kept believing the silence would crack if you said the right words. You kept thinking the silence was a wall you could break if you just knocked long enough. But what if the silence is not a wall? What if the silence is a door that has already closed? Softly, finally, completely. In many relationships, you've been taught that persistence wins. You've been told to keep trying, to keep showing up, to never give up. But what no one tells you in relationship advice is this: not all doors are meant to be opened again. Not all silences are meant to be filled. Sometimes, silence is not an empty space. It's a full goodbye. This is the mistake many broken men make. They think texting her one more time will reopen the door. They think checking her page one more time will bring her closer. They think waiting longer will bring her back. But you need to understand, waiting is not always loyalty. Sometimes, waiting is fear in disguise. Sometimes, waiting is your excuse to avoid facing the truth. You can text her. You can check on her. You can wait. But the power is no longer in your hands. You've spent days waiting for her to speak, but you've forgotten how to listen to yourself. You think you're waiting for her, but you've been waiting to hear your own voice again. This is where psychology holds the quiet answer. Acceptance is not giving up. Acceptance is not weakness. Acceptance is strength that no longer chases. You've believed that trying harder shows you care. But maybe stepping back shows you've grown. You've believed that holding on proves your love. But maybe letting go proves your self-respect. You've believed that waiting is noble. But maybe waiting is just the longest way to say goodbye. Some men text even when no one replies. Some men wait even when no one is watching. Some men hope even when no one is returning. But you can choose differently. You've been told that silence is a test. But what if silence is her way of moving on? You've been told that distance is a challenge. But what if distance is her way of finding peace? You believe the right words can change her mind. But maybe no words are what she needed most. This is what most dating advice forgets. It tells you how to get her back, but it forgets to ask. Should you? You think she's making you suffer, but maybe you've been suffering long before she left. You think she's hurting you, but maybe you've been hurting yourself. Carl Jung once said, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people." You've been chasing her silence, but you've been avoiding your own. You think her silence is cruel, but maybe your denial is even crueler. You think her silence is rejection, but maybe it's a mirror you refuse to look into. You blame her for the distance, but you never question the shadows you've carried. You can't heal what you won't face. You can't grow while you keep chasing. You need to stop asking when she will speak. You need to start asking when you will listen. Stop waiting for closure. Stop begging for a response. Stop running from your own stillness. This is heartbreak recovery for men, not by chasing closure, but by learning to accept silence. When a woman goes silent, it's not your job to fix it. It's your job to face it. The silence is not the enemy. Your fear is. You remember that phone, the one you kept checking, even when you knew no one would text back, the one that never lit up again, not because she stopped caring, but because you didn't know how to stop waiting. You didn't keep waiting because you were loyal. You kept waiting because you were afraid to leave. You didn't stay because you were strong. You stayed because you didn't know where else to go. You didn't hold on because you believed. You held on because you forgot how to let go. So now, would you still call it love, if silence is the only thing that remembers you? You are not the unanswered message. You are not the forgotten call. You are not the man who disappears inside waiting. You are a man who once loved, a man who can stand again, a man who can choose when to stop. This is self-improvement. This is where men begin again, not to chase someone else, but to finally meet themselves, not to win her back, but to win back their own ground. If this video reminds you of nights you spent sitting quietly, staring at a phone that no longer rang, leave a comment. Not to explain, not to prove anything, but to let that part of you finally speak. Maybe tonight, another broken man is sitting in that same silence. Maybe tonight, your words will be the only voice he hears. Subscribe to Deep Modern Man. This is where men who have fallen learn to rise, not by waiting, not by chasing, but by learning to stay with themselves.